This is Breaking Down Security, and I'm Brian Brake. So welcome back, everybody. We had so much fun with Bill last week that we wanted to bring him back again because in doing some research, we stumbled upon this thing called ASVS. And that was on, it's one of his blog posts. Actually, it's back January, so it's almost a year ago. But I found it so interesting because I'd never heard of it before. And semi-full disclosure, my company is, trying to quantify our secure SDLC. So I saw this and I was like, oh, we should probably look at this because this is good. And since Bill was here last week to talk about how to care and feed on the developers, I was like, oh, well, we'll just segue into ASVS. So we never actually let him leave for production value.
I'm still trapped here.
Yeah, that's right. We'll let you go after, you finish killing all the...
I'm almost out of bourbon.
Uh-oh. Well, you should have did that before during your bio.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah. Sorry.
That's okay.
How's the green room? It's really nice at the headquarters, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, indeed.
All the roaches you can eat, and yeah. All right, so let's talk about this ASVS. Sure. This was a post. This is another OWASP product brought to you by OWASP people. Maybe you could give us a little background of what this is about.
Sure. The ASVS was originally designed to give software developers on the security side, secure software development, right? Different from developing security products. Mm-hmm. So if I'm developing software that has to meet a certain security standard,
yes.
Medical software, for instance, mm-hmm. gives me the ability to describe to a potential consumer of the software on the corporate side, not the end user, so not people on the street, but a company. I can go to a company and say, hey, we meet a certain standard of security on our development practices. Mm-hmm. So this isn't testing.
Yeah.
This isn't, oh yeah, we had the smartest pen testers on the planet try to break into this stuff and they couldn't. Like what's the web browser thing that they do every year? Where they try to break into web browsers and everybody brings their new
Pwn-to-own.
Oh yeah,
Pwn-to-own.
Yeah, that's the one. And so that's dynamic testing, right? It's basically pen testing is what we're doing there.
Sure.
This is on the static side. So on the development process side, we can prove we have done certain things that meet a development security standard. And the goal was to find a number of verticals, identity, like access control and handling data properly, business logic, communications, these verticals in here, and then 4 horizontal levels. So level 0 being we did the absolute minimum possible to even consider security. Like we said the word security in the requirements meeting. So that's level 0, right? And then level 1, level 2, and level 3. Level 1 being, we did some stuff and it's pretty solid. Level 2 meaning, we've got people on our team who actually know how to spell OWASP. And then level 3 meaning, we've done pretty much everything that we know is possible to secure this application. There could still be something out there, but nobody knows about it yet. So, and all of these things have to be provable. Well, as it turned out, while many vendors do use ASVS per its design, what it ended up being was basically a list of security requirements. We have a problem in software development where only a very limited number of requirements actually end up in the requirements for software that are security related. For instance, login. If we have to track a user being, having a session on our software. So we log in and they can do things that relate to their account, for instance. That becomes a requirement. User can log in, right? But very rarely does randomization of the session token become a requirement. Now, a good developer knows that's a requirement. An average developer might just assume that their platform supports that. And today they would largely be right. But a lower than average developer might think, I'm just going to write my own session thing, just use an integer, and leave themselves open to a disaster, of course, as we all know. So those requirements that are kind of invisible ended up in the ASVS, because that's really what makes the difference between a secure development process and an insecure development process.
And this is a best practices framework. This is not a compliance framework. This is something to. There's a big difference.
Likes the term best practices. Nobody likes it. We try not to use that term. Yes, that's what it is. It's a best practices document. Yes, we don't say those words.
Yeah, but the only other option is the unenforceable one, which people hear is, oh, we don't have to follow it then.
I know. Yeah, it's a problem. The language is kind of an issue here. Nobody likes best practice. It's been overused, it's been driven to the ground. But this isn't compliance. This isn't, we're going to get sued. We're going to get driven to the ground if we don't do this. This is literally, hey, if you want to prove that you've taken security seriously, do this. Well, isn't that best practice? Well, yeah. In the best case scenario, that's exactly what best practice is.
Yeah.
But we've overused the term best practice so much now that for devs, it doesn't really mean anything anymore. So we try not to use it. Still, that's exactly what this is. It is a best practice security policy.
Okay.
So you said it has to be provable. I mean, who's checking these? Is there an ASVS, ASV?
No.
Right?
No, there isn't. It's not perfect. The idea is that this is not unlike filling out your tax form.
Mm-hmm.
So if you fill it on your tax form that you spent X number of dollars on hot dogs for your employees, that's just a line on the form, right? Only if you're audited do you have to prove that you bought the hot dogs with receipts.
Yeah.
And you have to prove that they were for the devs somehow, right? Nobody really figured that part out. I mean, you can show you bought the hot dogs, but who could show the devs ate them? Nobody really.
Sure.
The same thing is true here. There's no auditing. There's no ASV for ASVS. There's no certification. It's the honor system, and it's not perfect. But you know what? It's the first step, and I think at this point there's enough people who care about application security that they don't really care whether or not there's an audit. They just want a path to security, to better security, even if it's not security, just better security. And that's what this is. I mean, really, let's look at OWASP. I mean, it's just a bunch of guys like us sitting around at midnight writing docs, trying to get our best ideas on paper and have them peer reviewed over and over and over again to try to come up with something that we can distribute to the day-to-day line of business devs that will help them write better, more secure software. There's no higher purpose or anything. It's just we're just trying to get our ideas on paper to say, hey, listen, this is what we think. So we've got these people testing and these people these people writing code. We've merged them together, and this is the stuff that we think will help you write more secure code. If the people who are consuming it don't have pretty much the same attitude, the system breaks down. So Yeah, there's no audit in place. It's the honor system.
So walk us through a couple of highlights, right? What are some of your I guess most important sections in here?
Oh no, it's not like that. I'd love to tell you that there's key parts, but there's not. It's I don't remember who said it, but someone said the perfection isn't achieved by adding the last piece, but by taking the last piece away.
Mhm.
Really, this has been a focus on distilling the idea of application development from a security perspective down to a couple of sentences, and then leaving them to for people to consume at the level that they choose to consume it. If you go and look at V1, right? So this is the architecture piece. This is presumably the best 3 devs you've got sitting in a room with the stakeholder, the business owner, figuring out how the software is going to work. And you look at the features in V1, or I'm sorry, 1, 2, and 3, right? So 0 doesn't appear. 0 just means that you know how to like print the document. So you look at in the architecture space in stage 1, it's the description is verify that all application components are identified and known to be needed. So if you close your eyes for a second and look at you're probably most familiar with Python, look at Python, right? And look at all the import statements. And you think to yourself, so we're going to make sure there aren't any gray squigglies under the import statements. And if there are, we're going to delete them before we deploy.
Nice.
That's level 1. All right.
Sweet.
That's where we're going all the way up through to level 3 stuff that that we actually have defined the terms and the business functions of each component. So every component, we know exactly what functions we're using and what the security safeguards are for each function. And that's presumably provable. So we'd have to have a document, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whether you have that document or not is once again the honor system, but that's the goal, is to have that depth of understanding of the third-party libraries that you're consuming. What it comes down to is more about your own development environment and the software you're writing. So different software has different needs. And you've got to decide. I mean, it's perfectly valid for a mobile application to look at certain parts of this platform and say, well, okay, we're going to shoot for level 2 here and level 3 here, because it really depends on what kind of software you're writing, what kind of data. It's the same risk analysis we do for anything else in InfoSec.
Mm-hmm. Okay. But you can also, you have to set your own verification levels though. So you can, so would it be fair to say, okay, you would set your level 3 and then work back from that?
Well,
because that would be like the most ultimate thing that you could possibly do.
Honestly, there's 2 ways to look at this. Realistically, these are requirements.
Mm-hmm.
So in software development environment, you write requirements, and then you write a design to meet each requirement.
Oh yeah.
And then you stage them in your development process. So in Agile, you're going to have user stories written, and you're going to try to build the core functional product, something that cuts a swath along your requirements from top to bottom that meets user needs best as possible. When you include security into that, things get super complicated super fast, because you're trying to cut up and down along your requirements, right? So you're going to pick something that users want and make it as awesome as possible. as quickly as possible to get your product out the door. And then you're going to gradually widen your scope. But security features aren't like that. They're horizontal. They cut sideways across your product. So deciding upfront how secure each feature must be becomes key very quickly. And this goes back to risk, which is not really my thing. I'm a technician. I'm a wrench in this focus. I don't. I'm looking at something and saying, well, this data set is key. So there's a certain encryption level that should be level 3, whereas this data set's not so important. So this is a level 1. Deciding that stuff isn't really my area, but someone does have that skill set, and that person should be deciding on a case-by-case basis where you aim for. If you have a very narrow focus app, it might be viable to say, we're shooting for level 2 across the board, bang. But I think in most cases, you look at this as a feature list, a big 275 line long feature list, or however many it is now with 3.0. And then you just have to decide which ones apply to you and which ones don't. And the ones that do, you include, and their requirements, and that's that. And the ones that don't, you don't, and you forget about them.
Okay. So in the requirements document, when you set your verification levels, that would also be analogous to how important that is to the project. We need it to have session management. We need it to have a certain level of encryption. Yeah. We need to have data at rest, that kind of thing.
And keep in mind, if you use it that way, you're not necessarily going to be able to say we are ASVS level 2 or we are ASVS level 3. You might be able to. Or you might find a marketing person that's really good and can say somehow that we're level 2 most of the time, except for when we're level 1, and then there's times we're level 3, and make it make sense. But that's so way out. That's above my pay grade. I can't do that. But most of the time, you can use this as an internal focus point for security, where you can help the architects and the business analysts understand that there are actually requirements related to security, which is not something that people do really well, frankly. They in general, like I said earlier, login, maybe sometimes data encryption, a couple of things might end up in the requirements document, but you're never going to get output encoding, and you're never going to get session token randomness, and those things are just going to be assumed by the business because the business is assuming you're writing secure software. If that's the case, this document is your assumption. This describes what secure software requirements are. So if your business unit, if you look at them and say, let's talk security, and they go, well, we just figured you were going to take care of that, this document takes care of that. And you have to lay it down and say, here's what we have to do. We're shooting for level 2 on most things. It's going to add X to the time frame. And they're going to go, oh, that's way more than I thought. I know that. We're going to have to cut some features because of it in order to make the deadline. But the choice is, be not secure, which you said was a requirement, or, cut a couple of other features to make sure we get all those green boxes checked.
Yeah. And this kind of goes back to what we talked about in the previous podcast with you about talking to your developers. Yeah. You've got to get those requirements documents in, but you've also got to get this in early enough so that they understand the requirements of, either part of the epic in this case, or part of your, just the next 6 weeks on the sprint. We want to start implementing.
This is not something you use after the pen test has come in and found 23 vulns.
Yeah.
This is something you use at the beginning of sprint planning, or at the beginning of requirements gathering, depending on your platform, your overall procedures. requirements gathering is, I mean, it's funny because it's looked down upon by the new breed of development. You don't do requirements gathering. You do more native, more touchy feely. You're hand holding with the business. The requirements are gathered organically based on the needs of the business unit. Well, okay, that's true. And technically these are non-functional requirements. They don't fall into that pattern anyway. Really interesting how you're probably going to get 1,000 comments on your blog for this, but
Well, I hope so.
it's really interesting how non-functional requirements never really get discussed in all those agile development pieces. They never really talk about things like scalability. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That doesn't really come in. It's really fascinating how that happens because, frankly, that's what drives that quote unquote waterfall style of development, is the fact that if you're going to go in with 2 million page views a day, there are certain things you've got to do up front.
Yeah.
No matter how agile you are, there are certain things you have to do up front. Security is like that. There are certain things you have to do up front. You have to have an encoding library.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have a strategy for logging. There are things you have to have up front. And the ASVS is that list of things. And it doesn't really fit in so well with Agile, and it will make the people who are more document-centric, waterfallish, very stressed because it will add a ton of cost to a project. But if the assumption is you are secure, this is the path.
Yeah.
Take it or leave it.
Yeah. No, that's great. My wife tells me she has to. She's like the opposite of me. I don't do project management. She's the Uber project manager. So she talks
awesome.
about waterfall. She talks about Agile and stuff. She talks about getting requirements documents that say, oh, yeah, we'll figure that out later. And she's like, no. In requirements documents, there is no we'll figure it out later.
Right.
You have to have that done.
You have to have it now. Yeah.
You have to know exactly what that is. There's no, oh, yeah, sales will tell us what that is later on.
And the approach of Agile, small a Agile, was very appropriate when it was designed. It still is true today. This is still true today. The reality is that you say you have to figure that out now. Well, you know what? I can't do that because I don't know how the rest of the platform is going to work. So I basically have to write it to figure out this feature. Well, if you're building a spaceship, you've got to do that. But the fact is, if you're building a line of business application, you don't. You don't need to know that feature today. I'm sorry. I understand that you don't like you don't like this whole OCD thing because it's not in alphabetical order and you prefer to call it CDO. But the fact is that you don't actually have to know how this is going to work today. We'll build this, and then we'll build that, and then we'll figure out that feature. That's valid. There's a lot of validity to that. There really is. However, there are some things that have to be in place as a platform, like how am I going to access the database? Someone has to decide that. And that never gets in the Agile thing. Some architect, some senior dev just takes care of it magically. And then all the mid-tier people who are all, user stories and whatnot, they just kind of fall in. Oh, look, we've got Active Record running and everything's great. Great. That's fantastic. That's because I stayed here all weekend getting that working.
Right.
And that's the problem is that never happens with security. No one stays all weekend to get the logging framework working or to get the output encoding working. That's what the ASVS is all about. So that we can get it in front of the business users and say, look, this is what it looks like to actually write secure software. See those little checkboxes? All these checkboxes that are in orange here, that's level 1. That's the step above I can spell security, okay?
Yeah.
See all the blue ones? Yeah, that's a lot of work. So you can't assume security. This isn't what our platform is going to do. We have to do this. And that's what this document, this whole project does for you.
Very nice. Very nice. So you also mentioned in embedded security principles what the security principles project was. Is that just another like an addendum to the ASVS, or is that
No, the security principles project is, I don't actually know if it's still alive as a project. It probably is kind of. I could look it up real quick. But the security principles project is there's a goal in OWASP to focus on things like, oh, thank you.
Yep. Because the link is dead on the ASVS page.
Yeah, see how it has the big banner that says inactive OWASP project? So the project is inactive. That just means, so OWASP is volunteer run. People leave security and the projects die. All the project runners, I run the .NET project myself, the Microsoft .NET project. That project was dead. It was fired up in 2006. It died in 2008. It was dead for 6 years. I fired it back up in 2014. And the whole point of the project is to fill the gaps in the MSDN that don't talk about security. Quick example, PBKDF2 is fully implemented in the .NET framework, but there's no documentation. There's no, you can't figure out how to use it unless you know how the derivation formula works. And as part of the project, we provide 14 lines of code that let you use it without having to go download some third-party library. That's one more library you have to keep up to date. You can actually use the framework to do that derivation formula right in your product without having to implement your own crypto. It's in the framework.
Very nice.
So this project, the security principles project, is just one of those. Somebody fired it up and thought it was great, produced some documentation. They probably moved on to something else, couldn't get back to it. Eventually, the people stopped using the email list, the documentation stopped, and OWASP keeps up with these things. They watch their projects. All they do is oversight. All the projects are volunteer run. So as things gradually diminish, they move to inactive, and just to flag people to know, hey, this might not be the most up-to-date stuff. As it turns out, security principles are not something that go out of date.
Yeah.
One of the key things that I use is Security Onion, right? Defense in depth.
Yep.
That matters in network security and in risk and policy, but it's super important in application security. The key thing that I use all the time is, just because you've told the browser this field can only be 4 digits long or 4 characters long, that means nothing to the attacker. Yep. Because they are not using the browser, right?
That's right. Yep.
They're using a script or attack proxy. The server must also be restricting to 4 characters. Then maybe your data tier. You know what? Maybe your data tier is going to be set by something else one day. That should restrict to 4 characters too. That's defense in depth, right? We're doing input validation, 3 tiers of the application going down. That stuff doesn't go out of date. So that's why I still refer to this project, even though it's technically an inactive project.
Yeah. Let me see. Where was that? Was that on your link? Yeah. So yeah, I guess you could go and update your blog post and fix that link. So
I should.
Sorry, I didn't mean to call you out on your own blog. You got a deadline.
No, absolutely.
So that
what's awesome about blogging is that, I've spent 15 years now writing books. And the last book I wrote was this book about writing Windows 8 apps, so the Windows 8 store, and we all know kind of where that went. But it's getting better over time. Yeah. But still, this idea of writing these universal Windows applications, right? Totally different from what we've been doing with Win32 and whatnot. When the book went to press, I did some quick calculations, figured out 34% of my code samples in the book were already out of date by the time the press hit the first page.
Ouch.
And blogging and OWASP in general, this concept of a wiki, so much better.
Oh yeah.
Because we can keep things up to date.
Yep. Yeah, I've actually started doing a wiki myself, but locally on my box, so that I can keep track of all my information, like my notes and stuff. So
fantastic. Yes, that's a great idea.
Yeah. So, All right. Well, it's been a great couple of weeks with you, Bill.
I've been here for 2 weeks with one glass of bourbon.
That's right. I guess we'll let you go home now because you've been here for 2 weeks.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah.
You should probably get back to work.
Where I've been.
Yeah.
No, it's been a lot of fun, guys. Seriously.
I appreciate. Yeah, it's been very eye opening for us too. What I want to ask you about what you think of DevOps, but I don't think we have enough time, and I don't have enough space on my drive. So,
whole new podcast. Seriously.
Yeah. No. Seriously, we'll have to have you back with regards security and DevOps because I know that's something we're trying to implement as well at my office. So,
deployment scripts. Deployment scripts are the bomb.
Deployment scripts.
Deployment scripts.
Well, I guess we didn't need a podcast for that one. All right. So if people wanted to get a hold of you for jobs, if you're looking, I don't know if you're always looking for jobs or contracts or, on your blog, how would they get a hold of you?
So I'm an independent. I work wherever people need me. Work several projects at a time. You can find me. My company's name is Point. It's Products of Innovative New Technologies. Usually go by just Point, POINT. My domain is pointweb.net. You can find me at bill@pointweb.net. And I'm on Twitter at Sempf. Spelling that is impossible. Look at the show notes. But that's a great place to find me as well. I'm all over the internet. I've been around for a very, 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 very long time. So you can Google me and find me a lot of places. And send me a note. And I like to just chat about security. I'm all over around at several cons. If you've got developers, send them to Code Mash. We've got a big conference in Sandusky, Ohio. There's still tickets, I think. I'm not positive, but I think. It's in the United States' biggest indoor water park in January. We've got like 48 hours of fantastic security material going on. 42 hours of security material, including a bunch of training by Jim Manico and myself. So head on out there and you can come meet me and I'll buy you a beer.
Sandusky, Ohio. Yeah.
It's hot. It's rocking. I'm telling you.
In December.
January.
Oh, January, even better.
January in Sandusky. Yeah. It's in a water park. So imagine a bunch of devs wearing their Speedos and flip flops.
Oh no! Don't do
in
that.
January.
This is a family show. Come on.
I'm so sorry.
All right. So, other than Code Mash, are you going to be at any cons? Did you get SmooCon tickets or ShmooCon tickets?
That's the weekend after.
Okay.
And I run the security track, and my wife runs Kids Mash, which is 750 of the next level of developers coming in with their parents to learn about STEM topics. So we like sleep for the next week. So SmooCon, not so much.
That's good.
Aside from, I don't really know what I'm doing next year. So if anybody has any ideas, send them to me because I want to go to Circle City Con because that seems really awesome, but that's like in the summer. So
it's June, yeah.
Yeah, if there's anything in between I should go to, let me know.
Okay, sounds good. Sounds good. All right, Mr. Betcher, how would people get a hold of you if they wanted to talk to you?
On Twitter, I'm at BetcherPwned.
Okay. You can find me at Brian Brake, BryanBrake. Betcher's name is spelled Boettcher, and then add pwned at the end. He doesn't have a shorter name or a shorter Twitter handle, but we're working on that.
My Twitter handle is short, but nobody can spell it, so
SCMPF.
That's true, but if you can, okay, all right, we'll see if that works.
That's because I wrote it on my hand. Yeah. So the official BrakeSec podcast is at BrakeSec, BRAKE-SEC. You can always hit us up there. We're on iTunes. We're on the new TuneIn app. I use TuneIn quite a bit because I listen to Irish and Celtic music on the internets, and they were looking for podcasters to add to the list. So I was like, I'll just submit myself. So we're on there now.
Excellent.
We'll be on Google once Google starts releasing podcasts as well. If you're on iTunes and you download us using iTunes, leave us a review because we still only have 7 reviews. And I appreciate all 7 of those because they liked us a lot. And that was it for this week. I am grateful. Bill, please come back anytime you want to talk about the DevOps thing, security. If you've got a blog post or something, you want to discuss with us, we'd love to have you on. The last week's podcast, Feed and Care Developers, Care and Feed of Developers, was he gave that at DerbyCon. How did we not see you at DerbyCon?
I was around somewhere.
Yeah,
I was mostly in the bar, it seems. I don't know how that happened.
Oh, right. Okay. Well, that you can find that one on Iron Geek's website. If you do a search for Bill's name, you'll find that talk, that video.
Actually, there's a talk I gave at Columbus B-Sides about the ASVS. Also on Iron Geek's website. Oh. He was there recording Columbus B-Sides. So Great. if you heard if this struck a chord, go listen to that talk. It was I think it was this year. So go look and see, because it's actually a pretty good talk, and I got some great questions. So
okay. I'll find that link and put it in the show notes there. So.
Sure, great. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, sir, for joining us. Thank you, Mr. Betcher, for joining us. And
thank you.
Everyone have a great week, and we will talk to you very soon.
Bye-bye.